Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 439, written by AirieLee, When You Get Light Without a Light Bulb. I bought my grandmother's house with my husband over 10 years ago. My mother had lived there after my grandmother, and then she sold it out of the family. Those people lost the house, and I bought it on a short sale because it never stopped being home to me. The house was built in the 1940s. My grandparents moved there in the late 50s, early 60s. They kept it beautifully. Primo 1970s and 80s decor, when I think back to growing up there. My granddad died in 1986, and my grandmother moved to a smaller house. My mom and stepdad moved in, and my poor house went downhill. They did not upkeep, and neither did the people my mother sold the house to after she was divorced. My poor house suffered more each year, and then it sat empty for a few years until my husband and I bought it a little over 11 years ago. He's no handyman, but between us we were able to keep things from getting any worse. Recently, we have refinanced so we can make plans to fix some larger things that have been needed to be fixed for years. One of those things are the kitchen lights, 70-year-old fluorescent tubes. There are 4 of them arranged in a cross shape in the ceiling. They are old and need to be replaced. 2 of them always work, and 2 of them work sometimes. They may suddenly light up and work for 3 weeks, then will quit for a week only to light up again. I hate a dark room, so I'm always in a mood when only 2 lights are working. I was pleasantly surprised about 3 to 4 months ago when the 3rd light suddenly took a turn of working. It worked without fail until this past Sunday. I was so disappointed when I realized we were back down to 2 lights. I decided I would try to change the starter and bulb in hopes it would light up again. So I pulled a chair up to stand on and unscrewed the cover and reached up for the bulb. Only there was no bulb. None. It has been a few days now and I still don't know what to think. My husband won't talk about it. When I get him to say something, he says it was working, so there had to be a bulb. And I point out that there was not. There have been a couple other glitches here, so I think he might be scared. I just asked out loud in the kitchen, if you could light up without a bulb all those months, why stop Thanksgiving week? Case notes, file number 439. You know, I wonder if your husband knows more than what he's letting on. The fact he won't talk about it at all, at least in how you typed it, makes me think he's probably seen even more weird things happening around the home and is honestly afraid. So I agree with your assessment on that. I don't blame him either. The whole notion of glitches could drive the best of us nutty. There are some folks who just love a good mystery. Most of us here, listening to this, we have instincts that draw us to these weird happenings, and the eccentric folk of the world that decide to spend their time reading them all. Yeah. I suppose it's our spice of life. It is for me. Case file number 440, written by Ornia715. A case of the double aisles. My wife and daughter had the same glitch experience at the grocery store earlier today. We were sitting there eating, and she looked over at our son, saying that he looks different today. Said that people change over time, but is it possible that someone could see the moment that change happens? Then she kinda freaked out about a story she had to tell us. Wife and daughter were walking through a specific aisle, looking for a thing, realized it was in the next aisle, turned the corner and started walking down the next one. But instead, restarted the aisle that they had just left from the beginning. Not like they turned around, but a full circle. They noticed right away, so they turned around and checked the aisle they just left to confirm what had happened, and it was a completely different aisle. She noticed a change in our son that I can't see after this weird glitch. Is it possible my wife just shifted realities? If so, what happened to my original wife? She seems exactly the same. From my wife's perspective, I was in a grocery store with my daughter doing some shopping. We went down the canned chili aisle. While walking by the chili to the left, I mentioned to my daughter that it was too bad that no one in the house liked chili dogs. She replied with, "Yuck, Mom, hot dogs are gross." I said, okay, well, we do need some canned corn, so I looked above the aisle to read the signs above. I noticed canned vegetables were in the next aisle to the right, so we walked, got to the end of the aisle, and turned right. Before we turned the corner to the aisle on the right, I looked down and saw the chili to the left. I stopped and said to my daughter, "Hey, weren't we just down the chili aisle?" My daughter said, "Whoa, Mom, yeah, we were." Now we were both standing outside the two aisles, looking back and forth between both aisles. I looked to the one on the right, the one we were just down, and saw baking goods like flour and things. We both kinda tripped out a bit, laughing, chalking it up to we must just be confused. I'm open-minded, but this definitely wouldn't be possible. We wrapped up our shopping and came home. Fast forward to dinner time, minus a few details. The long story short is that I noticed my son's features looking slightly different to me. I kept saying how he looked just slightly older. Kind of like when you send your kid to camp for a week, and when you see them, you notice how they aged just a wee bit from the last time you saw them. I asked my husband if he thought it possible for a person to notice the moment of the slightest aging in a child. We are pretty open-minded in our house and like to entertain conversations that don't fall in line with society's standards. It's fun, and we like to think for ourselves. At some point, a while later, my daughter said, "Hey Mom, tell them about what happened at the store." I told the story, and my husband, being my lovable weird self, said, "I think you experienced a glitch in the Matrix. Maybe my old wife is gone, and that's why our son looks different." I laughed it off because I like to always see the rational side to things, and also thought he was mostly joking, so he posted about it. I have no idea what really happened at the store. Had my daughter not been there to experience it with me, I might actually believe I in fact do have a mental illness like some of the commenters on my husband's posts think. I'm also a firm believer that this is how most of society is brainwashed to think. Oh hey, they are weird and losing their mind. Give them meds. Over the past 5 years, I've been on a journey of loosening the grip that society conditions us to have, and has on me, and trying to unlearn most of the things from my upbringings. I'm learning to think for myself and also try to realize that my life may not be what it seems to the next person. Perception is everything, and the experiences are different depending on who experiences them and how they vary. I'm not saying I shifted realities necessarily. I'm also not saying that I'm insane. There's no black and white. There's only what I experienced, and no one will see things the way I do. Maybe I will never know what truly happened, and that's part of life. Nothing has to have an answer. Not every situation out of the cookie-cutter life experience has to be labeled insane. I thank you all for the input on my husband's post. It certainly was a fun conversation to be part of. Case notes, file number 440. Right, so a quick note here, I definitely don't think you're insane, and the easiest way to prove that is just because your daughter was with you and she noticed the same thing. So it would have to be two people being mentally ill in the same way at the same time. Is that very likely? I don't think so. Even logically, you have to admit something was up, even if we don't know what it is. Bonus file, written by Cherry124. When my new man cave becomes haunted. A little backstory about the spare room. When I first bought my home last year, there was a family of around 13 people living in it, 6 of which were adults, 3 small bedrooms, and 1 sketchy annex in the garage. A year later, and the neighborhood is still telling me stories about how awful these people were as neighbors. The annex room was initially shoddy framing and drywall, presumably installed by that family. The walls were painted a weird green color, and the rug was a wrinkly stained mess. It became apparent that someone had been peeing in all 4 corners of the room. I figured it might just be pets, but there was a mirror that had, "Please help me," written on it in makeup, and the room locked from outside. The day we got our keys, I got called to respond to the Seattle riots with my National Guard unit and was gone for about a month. During that time, my wife and the in-laws began renovating the home to make it livable. I felt guilty being unable to help. My wife got together with my mom to convert that scary extra room into a man cave / jam room with all my music equipment and memorabilia. It came out really nice, but I haven't found much time to use it in the past year. A couple months ago, I built a gaming PC and decided to set it up in that room. Now that I've been going in there almost daily, things have started to feel a little strange around the house. I get the sensation someone is standing directly behind me once or twice a day in the room. Our TV set on fire in the living room a few weeks ago. Our water main burst last weekend, causing us to dig up our yard over the course of 3 days, and my garage lights keep turning on and off. I can hear the light switch. This morning, I got out of the shower to find that my wife had already left for work. I'm coming down the hall and I hear her clearly say, "Hey babe," from the spare room side of the house. I replied, "You're still here?" To which I got silence. I looked out the window and sure enough, her truck was gone. That's when I heard it again. "Babe, come here." I grabbed my things and noped to work. Anyway, when I was pulling out of the driveway, I could hear what sounded like a girl screaming from outside, followed by a bang. I stopped before backing into the street, thinking, was that my phone? I waited for a second before continuing on my way, thinking it might be the school across the street. I got about 50 feet down the road before I heard it again. This time it was faint, but sounded like it was coming from the car. I paused at the stop sign and rolled down the windows to see if it would happen again, as it had sounded identical to the first one. Nothing. I rolled up my windows and continued on my way to find that it happened several more times, almost like a recording. Same scream and bang over and over for another mile or so. Anyway, I'm weirded out for the day. Might sage later and bang some pants together, I don't know.